Recent reports have indicated that the New York Knicks are not pursuing Donovan Mitchell super heavily in front of the NBA's trade deadline, and we have to talk about it. But real quick, yep, the sub graphic is back, guys. 16% of you are subscribed to the channel, while 84% of you viewers are not. Let's try to get those numbers up. Knicks Digest to the moon. We need your guys' help. But let's just jump right into the video now. We're here to talk about basketball, so let's do that right now. NBA insider Mark Stein reported on Monday that the Knicks do not intend to mount an all-out pursuit of Donovan Mitchell ahead of the February 8th trade deadline, and the Cavs, for that matter, signaled to rival teams throughout December that they are not prepared to entertain Mitchell overtures anyway, which is important to note also. This is not the most surprising thing in the world, though I know I did recently make a video on OG getting traded to the Knicks, means that they're probably going to go all out for Donovan Mitchell and probably land Donovan Mitchell. I stand by that. I just don't think it's going to happen before the trade deadline, and I honestly never did. If you look at a team, what team makes 2 blockbuster trades within 6 weeks? Like, that's not a realistic thing to happen. Leon Rose usually makes trades around early January anyway. When you look at the Cam Reddish trade, when you look at the Josh Hart trade, these happened a little, or this one happened a little bit before, but for the most part, Leon makes a move before the trade deadline anyway, not at the trade deadline. I think this is it for the season. He always makes one move in silence, whether it's trading Knox in the first for Cam Reddish, or then Reddish in a first for Josh Hart, and now RJ and Quickly for OG, Precious, and Malachi Flynn. I think he's done. I think we're going to roll into the playoffs with this team, and we are going to see what happens and what the Knicks need, and the Knicks are going to adjust accordingly in the offseason. And that, I do think, could definitely mean Donovan Mitchell. If the Knicks have a rough playoffs or just show that Jalen Brunson's the only one who's able to really create his own shot, then they're certainly going to look to land a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who could take some of that pressure off of Brunson. Donovan could finally play off ball for the first time in his career and also take some of the on-ball responsibility away from JB, so he could just have a little bit of a break. And also, when you look at a New York Knicks lineup, if they could keep the starters intact, and you got Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, instead of Dante DiVincenzo now would come off the bench, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and then Mitchell Robinson rolling into next season. That is a team that can contend with anyone. Look, there's no dynasties in the NBA. The Golden State Warriors dynasty is over. There's no more LeBron, great, legendary teams full of big threes. Sorry. The best team in the NBA is the Boston Celtics, and they are very top-heavy, and also it feels like if Porzingis gets hurt, they're going to have a real problem at center. Can Al Horford still play big minutes and guard the best of the best big men in the NBA? And then when you look at a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Knicks just absolutely beat them. So, yeah, the Timberwolves mounted a little bit of a comeback, but that's the first time this Knicks group has now played together, and they just knocked off the best defense in the league, one of the best offenses in the league, and one of the best teams in the NBA. And then if you go to look at the reigning champions, Denver Nuggets, they lost both Bruce Brown and Jeff Green in the offseason, and it's showing because they don't seem like they have the same firepower, as good as they still are. And outside of that, like, you have great teams. You have the Milwaukee Bucks, but, you know, they have their flaws with the lack of perimeter defense. The 76ers have their flaws, just as good as the bench is, as good as Tyrese Maxey's been. Is Joel Embiid going to stay healthy for an entire NBA season and the playoffs for the first time? It's hard to bet on it. It's sort of like the Celtics issue. Are you really going to bet on 7'3" Porzingis to stay healthy for a whole season, including playoffs? Has that ever happened before? Like, even at the end of his rookie year, Porzingis was getting injured. The end of his second year, Porzingis was getting injured. His third year, he tears the ACL. Fourth year, doesn't come back. Fifth year, on the Mavs, really trying to bounce back from that ACL. It never really worked out. He was always sort of dealing with lingering injuries, and Joel Embiid has been the same because they're both massive human beings smashing their feet into hardwood for a lot of minutes per night throughout an 82-game season. So it's one of those things that's hard to bet on. And then if you really look at the Knicks, if you could roll out a lineup like that, you have an elite starting five who has shot creation, perimeter defense, low post defense, good scoring inside, good scoring outside. That is a complete team, and it doesn't have a top 5 to 7 NBA player who could lead you to a championship, but it has enough guys who do enough things well that you can have an 0-4 Detroit Pistons vibe, where you have a bunch of top 50 players, a few top 25 players, a few top defenders, few top offensive players. You have a well-rounded team that really could work out, and then you'd probably still be able to have at least some of Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, Precious Achiuwa off the bench. Probably Hartenstein is going to leave anyway in the offseason because he's going to get paid too much because he's playing really well as the Knicks starting center right now. Which that will hurt, but the Knicks will probably be able to find some replacement level guy who, though is not Isaiah Hartenstein, will be similarly effective, or at least will get to mirror Mitchell Robinson in a way that maybe Hartenstein doesn't and Tibbs would more like. However, you can't argue with what Hartenstein's doing. If they lose him in the offseason, it's going to be a big loss, and it's going to hurt the Knicks. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're here to talk about Donovan Mitchell, and if you look right here, Mitchell is widely expected to decline his $37 million player option for the 2025-26 season and become a free agent, and even dodged questions about his future when speaking to Joe Varden of The Athletic last month. He said, "My job is to focus on this. We have 2 guys that are out, so I'm not answering anything. And no disrespect, I appreciate that you have to ask the question, but I'm not going there with any of these questions. My focus is on these guys being out and trying to find a way for us to get wins." Look, one of the reasons why Donovan Mitchell was not happy in Utah is because of the workload, and now he's gotten that back with Cleveland. Not only did the New York Knicks make him do that in the playoffs by basically daring Darius Garland to score off his own dribble, which he was struggling to do, the Cavs don't have much offense outside of their backcourt. And if you go to a team like the New York Knicks and they can retain the rest of the starting core, who obviously, again, be replacing DiVincenzo in the starting lineup, that's a much better team. And it's also in your hometown. He would probably rather play for the Knicks in general just because he gets to live in New York City, where he's from. So I think it would all be helpful. And really, we've talked about this so much that we don't have to go into why Donovan Mitchell would want to play for the Knicks. But do the Knicks want him? And I think after the OG trade, I think it would make sense over the offseason, maybe when trade rules are a little more flexible and you don't have as much to worry about like you do in the regular season, during the season, near the trade deadline, and also how you see you perform in the playoffs. Because maybe the Knicks show that they don't need a Donovan Mitchell type player, and they need something else, and they can go for that, and then you have the option to do that instead. We don't know who's going to ask out in the next year. Donovan Mitchell will probably be someone, but there's also a likelihood that someone else who's a good player asks out, who the Knicks could want. For instance, Deonte Murray, and maybe that's why the Knicks don't have a ton of interest in a guy like Donovan Mitchell. Maybe they're focused on landing Dejounte Murray instead. They're like, let's make a defensive unit. Let's take a guy who's like a true elite playmaker in this game. Help Brunson play a little on the ball, off the ball. One of the reasons that Dejounte and Trae Young don't work together is because they both want to make plays with the ball. And that's sort of the case with Brunson and Murray also. I mean, Brunson literally just had 16 points and then 14 assists just because his shot wasn't working. So anyone who's saying Brunson's not an elite passer or not a great passer is absolutely tripping. But really, he is there to score the basketball. I think it would be more of a fluid fit than Trae Young, though I do have my concerns because I don't really love the idea of Dejounte Murray playing a ton off the ball. Who knows how it would work out? Maybe the Knicks are looking that way, though, from a defensive standpoint, which would make sense. Dejounte Murray is miles ahead of Donovan Mitchell defensively. Murray's one of the better defending guards in the league. He's honestly one of the best at it. It's why the Hawks traded for him in the first place. And though it didn't work out, maybe the Knicks see something that the Hawks don't. Who knows? I don't love the idea. I would prefer Donovan Mitchell, but let's just take a look into some things here. Michael Escato said that the Knicks are going to continue to be active on the trade market. As previously reported by Hoops Hype, the Knicks have been targeting Anunoby and Hawks guard Dejounte Murray. While losing quickly seemingly hurts the package for Murray on paper, Murray remains a player that the Knicks are interested in acquiring, which is what league sources have said. Look, I have no doubt that that's the case, that the Knicks are trying to acquire Dejounte Murray to at least some degree. And I also have no doubt that they could. If you throw Fournier's contract, it gives an expiring deal to Atlanta to open up some cap space, and then you just throw a ton of draft picks their way. I do think there's a likelihood that Atlanta will accept the trade. There's obviously the worry with Clutch Sports. There's the worry with, does Dejounte really want to be in New York, or would he rather go to LA where the rest of his Clutch Sports guys are? Who knows? It's hard to tell, but really, I do think that the Knicks are definitely interested in Dejounte Murray. I'm pretty sure that's why that whole thing came up between the Knicks, or between Leon Rose and between Rich Paul, like the potential sit-down meeting. I do think it would have a lot to do with a guy like DeJounte or potentially Zach LaVine, but the Knicks don't seem to really be interested in him. And if you also just look right here, outside of the Los Angeles Lakers, who are the minus 115 favorites to be DeJounte Murray's next team, the Knicks are right there at plus 105. The Toronto Raptors are then at plus 950 with the Philadelphia 76ers. Also, 76ers, don't trade for him. Do not hinder Tyrese Maxey's development at all. Please. Please. I'm not even a 76ers fan. I'm a diehard Knicks fan, but I don't want to see that happen. And then also the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 950 and the Miami Heat are at plus 950. However, I do not think that the Knicks are going to go for DeJounte. I think they should wait for the offseason to go for Donovan Mitchell. And really, that's all there is to say on it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great day. We'll talk more about this in the future. Go Knicks.